Things off with just this big story that so many people are curious about. They're talking about this Delta Airlines flight that we know last night, it was around 8 o'clock when we started to kind of see what was happening, had to make this emergency landing at MSP. They described what happened as severe turbulence. Haven't said much more than that. We know now that more than 24 people were injured. We got a little bit of an update here a couple of hours ago. 18 passengers and 7 crew members, according to Delta, all treated and released. So that is the good news. We know that the flight left Salt Lake City. It was heading to Amsterdam ultimately. 275 passengers, 13 crew members on board. And we also now know that Delta's telling us that turbulence happened over Wyoming. So again, plane lands safely in Minneapolis, 7:45 last night. Paramedics, Minneapolis Fire met them there, but we haven't heard much more. So we wanted to talk a little bit more about it because it hits home with people on one level, because many of us have experienced turbulence of some kind, but also this is seemingly rare. So joining me now is former decorated Navy fighter pilot and airline expert Matthew Whiz Buckley. Thanks for joining us, Whiz.
Thanks for having me, Amy. Good to see you again.
Yeah, so this is a story that really plays on people's fears. Many of us have had those rough moments on a flight, but this seems rare, right?
It's extremely rare to have turbulence this significant. So, Amy, if the passengers were to listen to regular air traffic control communications, 90% of our talking back and forth with the controllers or even other aircraft are about how's the ride. When we check into a new sector, hey, St. Louis, I'm FedEx 123, how's the ride? So pilots are always often giving what we call PIREPs, pilot reports. So if there are reports of moderate to severe turbulence in different areas, we can maneuver around them, or we can ask for higher or lower altitudes. I can promise you and the flying public that the men and women sitting in the front of those airliners are always searching for clear air. But as we see in this incident, turbulence can appear out of nowhere.
At sort of just a high level, can you walk us through in the cockpit, how much notification would a pilot get that air is going to turn and it could get really severe? And then what happens, technologically at that moment to understand, do I need to divert? Do I need to reroute? That kind of thing.
Well, I'm going to split my answer. It could be instantaneous. You could get turbulence literally out of the blue. You could be in smooth air in 1 second, then all of a sudden you're just getting buffeted around pretty hard. Or you might have a little bit of a heads up, as we just talked about. You could hear that there's some potential turbulence in front of you. And sometimes you've probably experienced, Amy, I certainly have in the front. And as a passenger, as you start getting bumped around a little bit, you kind of hear the engines throttle back, right? So the pilots start slowing down there because there's actually a max airspeed where you don't want to be in turbulence. Now, these airliners are overstressed for turbulence. I mean, if you go and Google some of the videos of Boeing or other Airbus testing these airliners, I mean, they can almost get the wings to touch before these things snap. So these airliners are very well designed to handle turbulence. But we'll throttle back, obviously, because you don't want to be going too fast through turbulence, and then we're going to ask for a change of altitude. We're either going to get lower, higher, or left or right to get out of it. We're always searching for clear air as a pilot in the front.
And so as a casual, viewer of what's happening here and the little information we have, we know that this happened over Wyoming, right? So Wyoming, I'm going backwards here for the screen. And then here we are way over here in Minnesota, in Minneapolis. So what are the decisions that are happening between here and here? I can't imagine this is a decision that they take lightly to reroute a plane like that.
No, well, the decision to divert was because of the injuries, right? So there are some mountain issues. If you've ever flown over the Rockies or anywhere in the rest, you're going to get some mountain turbulence or some mountain waves and some different atmospherics over the mountains. But the captain making the decision to divert was based on injuries. I think, as you reported, 7, it sounded like, crew members were injured.
Yeah, 7 crew.
Obviously the cabin crew, they're up and walking around. They're not, unless the captain had directed them to sit down, it doesn't sound like it. So it sounds like this turbulence was one of those out of the blue. So the men and women in that cabin crew walking around, they probably got bounced off the roof. But so Amy, let me stress this. And a lot of us tune out what the captain says when we board, but what's the captain say? He or she says, hey, if you're seated, please have your seatbelt fastened. Even if the seatbelt sign's off, we want your seatbelt fastened. If next time you get on an airliner, maybe turn to the left and look at the cockpit. When we're sitting up front, we don't have a seatbelt, meaning a lap belt. We have a 5-point harness, kind of like almost a parachute harness. We are strapped in like a race car driver for this very reason. So when you are sitting on an airliner, I'm begging you to have your seatbelt always fastened. This is why these type of incidents are why the captains are required to say that and to remind folks.
Yeah, and this was an international flight, right, bound for Amsterdam, and you know how you're getting ready for a long flight. Some people take your shoes off, you kind of just, unless you got a kid, you want them to sleep, you might loosen it or take the buckle off. I mean, this is a really good reminder. And so you mentioned something I wanted to follow up on here. So you mentioned possibly a crew member who might be walking around could have maybe hit the roof with their head or something. Those were some of the questions I had about injuries. So if you're buckled, even with just the lap belt, are you still vulnerable? And then those who are walking around, do you think those were the only people who were seriously, maybe not seriously, but injured enough that they had to be treated at a hospital? Were they clearly not buckled at the time, which they maybe were allowed to not be?
So, Amy, I'm going to take an educated guess. I'm going to almost guarantee that everybody who was not buckled in or buckled in tightly got injured. Obviously, the cabin crew walking around. You've seen those drink and food carts, Amy.
Yeah.
Those things are not light. Those are a deadly weapon. And if you get pushed down, you have some negative G's and everything starts floating, those things can kind of become a weapon. So if you don't have your lap belt, I'm not talking tourniquet tight. I'm talking... it reasonably, just like in a car, not super tight, but not if it's super loose, because you're like, the seatbelt light's on, I just want to get away with it. I am buckled, but it's not. You're a danger there. You could slip out of that in turbulence and end up getting injured. But thank God, as you reported, most of these, or all of the folks have been released and no serious damage. But I'm pretty sure the captain diverted, because when you have injured cabin crew, you can't continue. You got to go to the closest suitable divert field to get those folks looked at, because the cabin crew is there, number one, for safety. Yeah. And if half your cabin crew is out, you got to land the plane immediately. Wow.
So interesting. And I guess one of my big takeaways from just listening to you here and what I've learned is that I never realized that it could happen so severely in an instant like that. I guess in my mind, you think, well, we're in 2025. Clearly, we have the technology that's going to, see that there's a problem and then give us at least a minute or two to be able to adjust. But that's really interesting.
No, so Amy, we have our own L-39 Albatross. It's a single engine 2-seat fighter jet that we fly with the No Fallen Heroes Foundation. I was flying out to Colorado, flying the jet out there. Beautiful day, not a cloud in the sky. I was kind of zoning out, and man, I got bounced off. And I'm strapped to an ejection seat and a parachute, but I loosened it up a little bit just to, kind of massage my legs. And out of nowhere, no clouds, no nothing, no ride reports saying, hey, there's turbulence in the area, and it got me. So. Wow. Reminder, aviation is extremely safe, as you did a great job at the intro saying. This is extremely rare. Yeah. So thank God everybody's safe, but just tighten it up a little bit, especially when you're seated, and you'll be okay.
It's a really good reminder. And that actually segues into the thing. I just wanted to switch gears a teeny bit and talk a little bit about the NTSB hearings on Capitol Hill, because it was, several months ago when we were talking to you right after the incident on the approach at DCA, the airport in Washington, D.C., Reagan National, where the chopper and airliner crashed, and multiple fatalities. It was just awful. And a lot of questions at that time, and you'd said at that time, about right now is when we're going to start to get some answers. So as you've been kind of watching, it's day 2 now of these hearings on Capitol Hill, what's been jumping out at you? Anything surprise you about what they found?
Nothing in here surprises me, Amy. They're getting into the tactics a lot. Hey, the altimeters might have been off a little bit and some systems issues or anything. But Amy, let me remind you, day 1 of flight school, your old crusty instructor is going to tell you, your number 1 mission objective flying an aircraft is not to hit anything in the air or attached to the ground. Ultimately, the failure of this Army crew to maintain a visual look at and not hit in other aircraft. So we can talk about the altimeter, we can talk about all sorts of tactical issues. There's only one reason that helicopter hit that regional jet, and it was the failure of the instructor pilot, the warrant officer, who was giving a check ride to the captain to poke her a little bit more. They were off altitude, they were off course. Aviation's a self-cleaning oven. If everybody did their job that night, Amy, you and I aren't talking about this right now, but aviation mishaps are all links in a chain. You take one of the links out, the mishap doesn't occur. For example, they talked about the air traffic controller giving them a direction like, hey, pass behind the RJ. Well, I haven't gone to air traffic control school, but I'm pretty sure they teach you probably on day one, if on your scope, two aircraft are heading right at each other, co-altitude, even if one of them said, oh yeah, I have that traffic in sight, you need to give them what we call a sugar call. Hey, Pat 25, confirm you have traffic on your nose, co-altitude, half a mile, acknowledge. That would have caused both those pilots in the Army helicopter to go, whoa, and probably take evasive maneuvers. So long answer to your short question, I haven't learned anything new. It just kind of confirmed what most experienced military and military aviators knew at the time. Thank God the RJ, the RJ pilots saw it too late. They had their gear down, their flaps down, they're landing. They're at 300 feet. Apparently there was a control input at the last second for them to pull back. I think maybe the first officer looking out his right side window saw some lights and they pulled. But this is 100% on the Army instructor pilot who just failed. Yeah. If I was an instructor pilot in the military, Amy, and if you have to tell somebody who's doing a check ride something more than twice, the check ride's over with. They failed. You take the controls as the instructor and we go back to the base. I think he let the leash out a little bit too much here with a senior captain who just came from the White House, and maybe just let me let the leash out a little bit. Sure. You can't. Wow. As we just said, aviation's a self-cleaning oven, and that's a tragedy that just should not have happened.
And then we saw, almost immediately, there was this really intense look at, the infrastructure around there. Like you said, the staffing, that was a big issue. What changes have been made since then that would affect the general flying public?
Well, hopefully they're interviewing a lot more air traffic controllers and qualified air traffic controllers. It's been reported, and I think the NTSB said this as well, that one of the folks in the towers was allowed to go home early. It was going to be a slow night, so we're going to cut somebody loose early. Well, clearly they shouldn't have done that because the controller in question was working two jobs and also two radios. Remember, the RJ was on a civilian radio frequency, and the Army helicopter was on a military UHF frequency. So a little bit of task overload for the controller in the tower, and we saw what happened. It's sad. And the NTSB also said, hey, there's been a ton of near misses. In aviation, we say complacency kills. So even though there was maybe little tolerance, they were supposed to be at or below 200 feet, they were above that, and they hit the airliner. They got away with it for so long. I guess nobody's hitting each other doing this stuff, so let's just keep allowing this to fly on this route. Wow. Well, clearly the luck ended. So a lot of lessons learned from here. Thankfully, we do debrief. The NTSB comes out with come out with a final report, and we're going to learn some significant lessons.
Yeah, that really was the one, and you remember you and I talked a lot about it at the time. That was the one, and then subsequent smaller incidents kept happening, and then everybody's ears just kept kind of perking up. So I guess finally, I just want to have you talk to us. You have the insight here. A lot of people say, well, it's safer than driving a car or whatever. You tell us what should we know? Are we seeing more incidents? Should we be more concerned?
No, well, a couple things, Amy. It's not passé to say that I'm more terrified driving to and from the airport, especially down here in South Florida on I-95. People just cannot drive. Sadly, 120 people on average die in this country every day in motor vehicle accidents, and thank God 120 people aren't dying every day. And we saw a couple days ago in Denver the brake fire, and people. So this thing right here, this cell phone, people in a mishap are live streaming, right? They're going down the slide doing an Instagram live. So it brings these mishaps immediately to us. It literally around the world in a second. I'm old enough. I'm not going to date myself too much, but before Al Gore invented the internet, I was flying, and We didn't have that type of stuff. If there was some sort of mishap, maybe we heard about it. Maybe a month later, like, oh, did you hear about that American plane in Denver?
Yeah.
Or not. But cell phones and it's ringing, instant reporting, so to speak, is bringing this to the forefront. I'm going to tell you what you and I talked about months ago. It's the same. Don't believe me. Go to ntsp.gov and look at the same time frame from last year and this year, and it'll surprise you because there's actually less incidents year to date than last year. So it's safe. Trust me, I would not be, if I stop getting on airliners, you'll be the second one to know. But I think we're okay.
Yeah. I was going to let you go, but now you brought up Denver, and I have to ask you this because it was such a talker online. People were looking at the people who were getting on the slides and evacuating the flight as there was a fire, I believe, underneath. And a lot of them had bags in their hands. A lot of them and there was just a lot of conversation and chatter online about what in the world? I mean, people were grabbing their stuff. They were but I was curious, as you were watching that kind of unfold, what was going through your mind?
I was infuriated. I promise you, if you are standing between me, my beautiful bride, my kids, and the airplane's on fire and safety because you're getting your bag, I will remove you out of the way. There is nothing in your bag that is worth my life, my bride's, or my children. Get off the aircraft. Do they think that they get to the bottom of the slide? Well, I got my bag. They're going to rebook me on a flight immediately. I'm on my way. You're not going anywhere, man, for hours. Okay, so you're going to get your bag eventually. It's stupid, and I mean that with the full weight of that word. Do not wait to get your bag. There was I forget the flight number. Aeroflot 1492. It was over, I believe, in Russia. They bounced a couple times, skidded off the runway, and the back of the plane caught on fire. 41 people, I think, died, and they blamed it on the people because the back was on fire. Everybody had to go through those front slides. Watch the video online. People coming out with their bags. They said that most of the people in the back died because they couldn't get out because people were getting their bags. Or don't watch the video. It's pretty horrific, but it'll demonstrate why you do not grab your bags. And again, I will move you out of my way if you are focused on getting. I'm going to be like George Costanza on Seinfeld, man. When there was a fire in the kitchen, I'm going to run you over if you're stopping to get your bag.
That's exactly right. Yeah, these are just good reminders. So many people fly, and these are rare things that happen. But you want to be thinking about it so that if it ever does, you make the right call and don't put other people's lives in jeopardy too, or your own.
Precisely.
Thank you for joining us as always. It's a pleasure to talk to you and glean some of your insight into these things early on. So appreciate your time, Whiz.
You bet. Thanks, Amy. God bless. We'll see you.
Take care.